Good morning. I'm Susan Monroe with Chambers for Innovation and Clean Energy, and along with our co-host, Conservatives for Clean Energy of North Carolina, we welcome you, including our special guest today, Senator Thom Tillis, as well as our all-star panelists and three outstanding economic development and statewide Chamber of Commerce leaders from Charlotte, Asheville, and Cary. We would also like to thank state and federal legislators who are joining us today. So during our planning session for today's discussion, I wrote down three quotes from our panelists, and I can't even remember which one said what, but together they all pretty much had some clear messaging. Medium, heavy duty transportation, electrification is our sweet spot. Fleets are adopting faster. We have a clear path to an electrical future. And that's why we're here today. With other countries looking to corner the market, what's at stake for North Carolina to not only be a national leader, but a global leader in this undeniably growing sector? U.S. Senator Thom Tillis knows what's at stake and has exhibited critical and steady leadership in support of clean energy innovation. The senator states that North Carolina can continue to create better paying jobs and develop innovative renewable technology, adding that both parties need to work together to deploy an innovative market-driven strategy to combat the impacts of climate change. Serving as a U.S. Senator since 2015, Senator Tillis serves on three committees: Armed Services, Veteran Affairs, Banking, Housing, Urban Affairs, and the Committee on the Judiciary. His work now and when he served in the North Carolina House of Representatives has been laser focused on enacting job-creating policies to generate economic growth and opportunity for working families. We are so pleased that the senator could join us tomorrow. Following the senator's remarks, Lori Barnhart, Executive Director of Conservatives for Clean Energy of North Carolina, will join the senator for a robust discussion. Please feel free also to submit any questions for the senator or any of our panelists in the Q&A box. Senator Tillis, good morning. We have legislators from across the state, industry leaders, chambers of commerce, and economic development professionals who are with us virtually this morning. So on behalf of all of us, we welcome you.
Good morning, Susan. Thank you for the introduction. Thanks to the Chambers for Innovation and Clean Energy and Conservatives for Clean Energy, NC, for hosting this event. It is exciting to see the progress that we're making in the area of renewable energy. And it's also equally exciting to see the opportunities that we have in the United States to be an innovator and a leader, particularly when we're talking about medium to heavy electric vehicles. And in the coming decade, millions and millions of electric vehicles on our highways and our roads. I think it was when I was in my second term, so it would have been 2009, I decided that the Republicans needed to come to the table with Democrats to come up with a renewable portfolio standard that we also believe the investor-owned utilities, the stakeholders could agree with. And we did that. The original proposal was a little bit of an overreach, but on a bipartisan basis, we put into place the underlying infrastructure that made North Carolina one of the most successful solar states in the nation. 2 years later, when I became Speaker, I decided we had to set a priority on the industries that North Carolina is best positioned to grow in, not be all things to all industries, but find these sectors that we thought had the best employment base, the best research institutions, the best indigenous businesses, so that we could drive job growth and economic opportunities for North Carolinians. So we focused on high tech, financial tech, industry, as with a hub over in Charlotte with Duke Energy. And those investments and that focus have paid off. Now, looking ahead, I want more Tranes, more Eatons, more ABB Eatons. Ingersoll Rand, the parent company, just about 15-minute ride from my house, to find new reasons to invest in North Carolina, particularly as it relates to building out our infrastructure and providing solutions for electric vehicles. So in the coming months, we're going to have here probably in July a potential for a bipartisan infrastructure bill that I think can help lay the groundwork and be very helpful in this space. But what we also have to do, the final thing, is to take a look at the future and more resilient supply chains. We all know that a lot of the inputs for electric vehicles, for renewable energy, have a lot of reliance on China, both for rare earth materials or minerals and for manufacturing, either finished product or along several links in the supply chain. We've got to figure out a way to create an opportunity for much of that manufacturing to happen in the United States or in jurisdictions that we have friendly relationships, alliances, and economic partnerships. If we do that, then we can end the ever-present threat of tariffs slowing down an industry or of supply chain shortages, slowing down progress to benefits realization. So we've got to work both at the federal and the state level to recognize that the United States is best positioned to be the leader in this space. And I'm going to be there every step of the way. Final thing, I serve as the ranking member. I was the chair for 4 years, now ranking member on the Intellectual Property Subcommittee. So much of this innovation is going to be dependent upon being able to secure our patents and being able to secure our intellectual property. So it's outside of what you would traditionally think of in terms of a critical success factor for the energy industry or renewable energy, but I believe it's one of the most important ones, so that we maintain the intellectual property and incent people to create and share that information through our U.S. patent system. So, Susan, that's about all I have for comments. I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, thank you all for participating today and for what you do every day in pursuit of energy, fully renewable energy in the United States and across the globe.
Thank you, Senator, for being with us today. We're so honored that you're here. I'm Laurie Barnhart. Susan introduced me briefly. I am the North Carolina Director for Conservatives for Clean Energy. And I've had the pleasure of knowing Senator Tillis when I was a staffer in Raleigh at the North Carolina General Assembly when I worked with Representative Craig Horn. And now I have the pleasure of seeing you occasionally in D.C. and in Raleigh. And of course, my husband, Jeff Barnhart, also served with you when you were Speaker in the North Carolina General Assembly. So it's great to have you. Great to have you with us. I've got a couple of questions, and just answer them at your leisure with as much detail as you'd like. So the first question, Senator, so we can get into some of the opportunities you see on the horizon in terms of the transportation and infrastructure bills that you and other members of Congress are working on right now. What details can you share about the discussions and negotiations happening among Republicans and Democrats in the Senate with President Biden?
Well, Laurie, first, it's great to see you. I miss Jeff and Craig Horn, but I haven't seen Craig in a while, but I ran into Jeff just recently. But, as far as the infrastructure bill is concerned, I've been a member of a bipartisan working group for about 6 weeks now to really try and first shift the discussion on true infrastructure, roads, bridges, and broadband, which I think COVID has taught us that it's a critical part of our infrastructure. And we've made progress. I have, before I got on the video, I was just telling my staff, I've got to review some documents that came from a meeting that some of the members had with the president. And at this point, it seems like there's progress. The real challenge that we have to face going forward for the infrastructure, for us to continue to have the resources to fund infrastructure, is to also take a look at the way we're going to fund infrastructure going forward. So we're going to get into the potentially thorny subject of a use tax for electric vehicles, because at this point, they're not really paying, or we're not capturing any use for our roads and bridges. And if we're able to get that right, get the negotiations right, then we've got a long-term stream to not always go back to the well and have the discussion about raising a gas tax, which is back in North Carolina, you talk about raising the gas tax, you could have a revolt. We've got to come up with a way to have a fair and equitable method for capturing revenue to fund future infrastructure projects. But I'm actually optimistic. If you'd asked me this question 2 days ago, I said, I'm not sure we're going to get there because we had a few differences with the White House, but I'm told that the last discussions have been very positive. So now I'm on the plus side for thinking we can get something done when we come back from the state work period the week after next. I think that the future, though, has to be what more do we do to accelerate progress in the manufacturing space? And that won't be a part of this infrastructure bill, but it is certainly a part of the discussions that we're having up here, up to and including taking some of the previously appropriated COVID funds in the out years and using them for economic development projects like this.
That's good news. I'm glad the last 2 days did you feel good about that?
Things change quick. It's like the weather. It changes quick. Sometimes it's nice and sometimes it's stormy.
I know, exactly. Okay, second question. What advice do you have for the companies, chambers of commerce, and others attending today's event? How can we help you and other members of North Carolina's congressional delegation ensure the strongest possible infrastructure bill passes the House and Senate and is signed by the president?
Well, I think if we're able to publish the framework, again, I'm going to look at it as soon as I move off of this call. The moment it gets public, take a look at it and get behind it, because it will by definition be a bipartisan bill. And I think that it will be significant. It will be in the hundreds of billions of dollars. And we need the business communities to come together, just like Democrats and Republicans have here, to move forward with this very important project. We've been battling. President Trump proposed a $1.7 trillion infrastructure package. We could not get bipartisan support for that. President Biden was thinking about going a different way, but now it seems like he may be amenable to a bipartisan bill that I think hits all the top priorities. So the chambers, the businesses represented, those who are viewing, take a look at it. Don't sweat the few things that you may not like, but look at it as a whole. And I think you're going to find, if we get to where I believe we're going to be, you're going to find something that's beneficial to the United States and beneficial to North Carolina. But looking ahead, we also, you asked me what you all could do to support the infrastructure bill. But I want y'all to know that it's very important for me, for my office, and working with my congressional delegation members to support you. So if there are economic development opportunities in this space, never hesitate. After you get the first whiff that there's a business interested in setting up shop or expanding current operations, get us involved and let us do everything that we can to demonstrate North Carolina's commitment to businesses expanding or relocating to North Carolina. And I've got Kyle Sanders, who's my deputy chief. I've got Corey Brown, who focus extensively in this space, and they'll get on a plane and go anywhere if we can help pursue an economic development opportunity. By the way, that includes me.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I can't tell you how much we appreciate all your supports of clean energy initiatives in North Carolina. It's just in the whole country. Hope you can stick around, Senator Tillis. Right now, I am going to throw it over to Joe Bost with the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance.
Thank you, Laurie.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. Good morning, everyone. I want to thank the Chambers for Innovation in Clean Energy and Conservatives for Clean Energy for hosting this webinar this morning. As Lori mentioned, my name is Joe Bost, and I work for the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance. I lead our government affairs efforts in Raleigh. The Charlotte Regional Business Alliance is committed to promoting the advancement and growth of the Charlotte region. We want to do all that we can to make the region and the state attractive to new business. Our long-term legislative agenda looks at how the Charlotte region can remain competitive over the next decade, and energy policy is critical to that outlook. Transitioning to a cleaner, more resilient energy system is good for customers, businesses, and the state of North Carolina. We must ensure the electric grid can support the demands of a clean energy economy one with advanced energy technologies, while maintaining the affordability and reliability customers in North Carolina expect. Now it's my honor and pleasure to introduce a friend of the business community in the Charlotte region and a key investor in my organization, Brian Jones. Brian serves as Vice President of Government Relations and Public Policy for Trane Technologies. In Trane Technologies, he serves, leads, directs, and executes all advocacy and policy work before the Congress and federal agencies and in capitals throughout the country. He also has the responsibility for developing, communicating policy positions to a vast network of lawmakers, regulators, and related constituencies. In addition, Brian manages Trane's PAC. Now, before his work in the private sector, Brian served as a speechwriter and researcher for President George W. Bush and spent time working on Capitol Hill in both the House and the Senate, which is some feat to work in both House and Senate. So he's got a great outlook on how Capitol Hill works. So welcome, Brian, and thank you for joining the discussion today.
No, thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate that. And again, thanks to the chambers as well for hosting and for the kind invitation. And then also just want to thank Senator Tillis, just a great champion. Trane Technologies corporate headquarters is based right there in Davidson. He cited the Ingersoll Rand campus, which we now share with them after our split back in March of last year. It was actually just a few days before the pandemic hit. So that was a lot of transition and change in a short period of time. As Joe said, I have the great privilege of leading the government relations and public policy efforts on behalf of Trane Technologies, a company, as I said, it's really only been around since March of last year. It includes two major brands. We have Trane, which is our commercial and residential heating and cooling, and then also Thermo King, which is probably more relevant for this conversation. That's all of our transport refrigeration. It's been interesting is a lot of these things, topics, crises, pandemics come up simply because we've had to adjust our government relations efforts towards that. So if you had told me when I came into the job about 3.5 years ago, I'd be working on Section 232 and 301 tariffs, I would have said, I don't know what that is, and we need to figure that out. But then also in regard to the pandemic, we've really tried to be as helpful to the vaccination process. We're one of the only companies that actually has super freezer storage capability. We manufacture those to handle the Pfizer vaccine, for instance. And so we've really had a close relationship with Operation Warp Speed and trying to get the largest number of vaccines to the largest number of people possible. So that's all within our portfolio. Senator Tillis for us is a great champion. I think on day 3 of taking this job, I was on a panel with him down in Raleigh, and it was all about sustainability. And that really is what drives everything that we do. And we have really bold sustainability commitments that we put out. We just put out our 2030 versions of that, and they include a pledge to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by a gigaton. I remember Congress asked me last week, is that a lot? And so the point very well taken. It is a lot, and it represents the total carbon emissions of France, Italy, and the UK combined. And it also represents 2% of the world's annual emissions. So for us as one company, we're trying to reduce our customer greenhouse gas emissions by that much. And so our chief executive officer, Michael Mott, constantly is telling people that's just one company working on that. Think of what we could do together if we just pooled all of our efforts. So, and as we're talking about today, as a pure play climate innovator, we're uniquely positioned to lead that movement. And so in addition to the Gigaton Challenge, we've had a lot of progress on that. We also need to look at the decarbonization of our buildings, mostly because large buildings are used longer than other ones, and they need to be retrofitted and energy managed successfully. And then also energy intensity. I mean, buildings consume about 40% of the energy produced in the United States. That's a staggering number. And of that 40%, a third of the building's energy use comes from HVAC. And since the demand for cooling is going to be increasing, our estimates are that it will triple by 2050. Obviously, a lot needs to be done to make sure that we're doing this in the most efficient way possible. So with that, and when we're talking about revving up the transportation electrifications, we have a number of products and innovative strategies and solutions that we're implementing. We have a pledge by 2024 that Thermo King, which handles our transport refrigeration, will have an electric solution in every segment of our end-to-end cold chain solutions. We have one called the E200 that represents the next generation of all electric refrigeration units, and that can help, again, decarbonize our global supply chain. And so how are we doing that? We're doing that through partnerships with electric vehicle providers, and also just advancing the ideas of electrification of refrigerated transports to reduce our pollutants, emissions, and noise as we deliver those. So there's a lot of exciting things that we're working on. I don't want to turn this into too much of a commercial for Trane, but we really look forward to continuing the discussion. It's a robust discussion. I think that we've seen in the last few years a bit of a sea change when it comes to thinking around sustainability, whether that be with Republicans, moderate Democrats. They're starting to listen. And I think the reason why is because we keep reiterating the point that all of these efforts that we are making are not just good for business, they're not just good for the environment, they're also good for business. So look forward to the discussion with all of our partners. Again, thank you, Senator Tillis, for joining and for the kind invitation to be here today. Thanks.
Well, good morning. I'm Mark Lawson, Vice President of Economic Development with the Cary Chamber of Commerce. Susan, I'd like to thank you and your team for having us this morning. And Senator Tillis, it's a pleasure being on here with you this morning, and thank you for all that you do. Cary Chamber has been committed for over 6 decades to continue to support and attract world-class innovative companies, such as you'll hear from this morning with ABB and its partners who are leading and developing cleaner, more efficient forms of technology. This morning, I'm happy to introduce to you today Mr. Gary Ratcliffe, ABB Vice President for Market Development and Innovation at Hitachi ABB Power Grids, located in Raleigh, North Carolina. Gary has an extensive experience leading flexible AC transmission system sales, business development, and software development for utility operations, software, strategy and marketing communications for power grids and products and systems, regional sales for T&D equipment, and smart grid and grid modernization, innovation, and strategic initiatives. Gary is a member of the Department of Commerce Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Advisory Committee, and many other state and national energy organizations, including serving as board chair for the Research Triangle Clean Tech Cluster. Clearly an expert in energy innovation and a great partner and a great corporate partner here in the town of Cary and the Research Triangle region. Gary, thank you for all that you do, and thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to your remarks.
Great. Thank you, Mark, for the introduction, and I appreciate the invitation from Susan and the Chamber to join the roundtable this morning, and also appreciate the time, Senator Tillis, for you to be able to join us in the roundtable discussion as well. So just a quick introduction of Hitachi ABB Power Grids. This is a joint venture which was formed almost 1 year ago, July 1st, which joined Hitachi and then ABB to basically focus on power grids. So the 4 businesses that were in the ABB Power Grids business moved over into the joint venture. Hitachi owns just over 80%, and ABB owns the remaining 19.9% to be exact. So the company does have 4 businesses, which is shown in the center on the bottom. So the bottom 2, high voltage and transformers, that's really the power grid equipment, the hardware that goes into delivering energy from generation to the meter. More importantly, for today's discussion, the other 2 businesses, grid automation and grid integration, are where we're focusing on some of the components of electrification of transportation. Grid automation is our software business for enterprise software solutions for utilities, as well as operational software, but it also includes the control system, microgrid controls, and the ability to manage electrification at depots and fleets and control the energy consumption and optimize that consumption. And then grid integration is a business where we combine our products and softwares into system solutions, such as the solution I'll talk a little bit later about, for fleets, particularly for heavy duty and medium duty vehicles. Just in terms of our local presence, our headquarters for North America is located on the NC State campus, where we also have a corporate research center. We have about 450 employees locally. In the country, we have about 3,610 different manufacturing facilities that are located in the US. Next slide, please. Oh, you already pulled it up. So the energy transition. So my focus at Hitachi ABB is really in four main areas. So the first is just grid modernization, addressing the resilience, reliability of the grid, the efficiency, also power quality, and equally important is the security, both physical as well as cyber security. Also involved in the digital transition of the grid. But the third area and the fourth area really related to the energy transition, one being the integration of renewables into the grid as we move towards a carbon-free generation portfolio, and then also the transition or electrification, expanding the use of electricity. And certainly the electrification component is important. It's going to more than double the electric demand as we move towards 2050. It does improve efficiency, and we see obviously electrification touching the transportation sector, which is the number one source of carbon emissions in this country, followed closely by power generation. So focusing on the renewable generation and carbon-free generation, and focusing on electrification, particularly electrification of transportation, is really going to help us drive towards our greenhouse gas emission targets and represent two significant pathways for a reduction in emissions as we move forward. So our focus today is really on electrification of transportation. And electrification of transportation is not only buying electric vehicles for you to commute back and forth to work or for private use. It's also rail. We do a lot of work in terms of electrification of rail, both on the wayside facilities to supply the electricity as well as the rolling stock. But we're also focusing on electrification of medium and heavy duty vehicles. And there's a couple of reasons why. One is the decision to move to electrification for fleets is a business decision. It's dollars and cents. We've reached the tipping point where total cost of ownership makes sense to go to an electric fleet in transition. The other factor is the utilization of the vehicles. The benefits of electrifying a fleet include reduced maintenance and lower energy costs. The price of electricity is less than the price of diesel fuel, for example. So when you combine the operation and maintenance expense reductions, total cost of ownership is now reaching parity and in some cases lower for electric vehicles. And you get the benefit when you use renewable power to reduce carbon. So we see the shift to fleets perhaps moving quicker than the shift to private light-duty vehicles, mainly because of that high utilization factor where the vehicles are in use 10, 12 hours a day potentially. I know my personal vehicles, I think sit, particularly working from home, I think I use them less than 5% of the time. So you can recover that investment in an electric vehicle and the charging infrastructure much, much faster when you have that high utilization. And so those are the key issues we see in electrification. Yeah, this slide focuses on our electrification. This is showing a bus depot where there might be a demand of 1 to 2 megawatts of power to charge the buses, depending upon the route, number of buses, et cetera. And so we see this shifting. We see a focus on managed charging. We see a focus on grid make ready to enable this electrification.
Good morning. My name is Clark Duncan, and I serve as Senior Vice President for Economic Development at the Asheville Area Chamber and Economic Development Coalition. For over 125 years, the Asheville Chamber has understood the power of collaboration and building a more robust economy, a stronger community, and a more sustainable future here in Western North Carolina. For that reason, I'm very pleased to join the Chambers for Clean Energy and Innovation, as well as the Conservatives for Clean Energy this morning. I'm proud to support the renaissance of American manufacturing taking place here in Western North Carolina, led by longtime corporate citizen Eaton Corporation. Clean tech, innovation in power, in automotive, and aerospace sectors continue to drive real and sustained growth in the workforce, wages, and GDP of the Asheville region. We look to companies like Eaton as partners in community and economic development with a shared vision for innovation, environmental stewardship, and resiliency. Today, I'm very pleased to introduce Christopher Hess, Vice President of Public Affairs for Eaton, a global power management company that serves customers in more than 175 countries. Chris works cross-functionally with Eaton businesses to develop the company's strategic position on global regulatory, legislative, and governmental issues. He advises Eaton stakeholders on complex global policy issues, including but not limited to airspace, defense, energy, trade, taxation, and government programs and procurement. Chris also works with Eaton technology teams to obtain millions in research and development funding from government programs in US and Europe. Chris currently is a member of the board of directors of the Public Affairs Council, the Electric Drive Transportation Association, and several other trade associations, including the National Association of Manufacturers and the National Electrical Manufacturers Association. I also learned this week from peers of Chris here in Asheville that he was integral to Eaton's leadership in powering the largest microgrid project on the continent of Africa in recent years, proving the global reach of good corporate citizenship. Chris, on behalf of the Asheville Area Chamber and the Economic Development Coalition, we greatly appreciate Eaton's commitment to the Asheville region and to the state of North Carolina. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Clark. Appreciate it very much. Very kind words. I'm so happy to be here with everybody. I'm going to be sharing a slide deck, and hopefully that goes seamlessly in this. Okay. Excellent. So, Clark, thank you again for your introduction. Eaton is a proud corporate citizen of North Carolina. We are, I think, just very much enjoying the collaborations that we have across the state. And I'm going to get into our footprint and our investments there. These discussions around electrification of the transportation sector, the quote that Susan mentioned earlier about being in our sweet spot is definitely an Eaton sweet spot. These issues of sustainability, emissions reduction, and efficiency are not partisan issues for Eaton. We are collaborating with every stakeholder that wants to listen to promote the future of transportation, not just in the United States, but around the globe. And we feel that there is a special opportunity for the United States to again lead the world in all of these technologies. And we are sort of at a transition here, brought on probably most directly by a pandemic to say, how are we going to be more efficient? How are we going to get these goods and services to market? How are we going to reduce emissions and address climate change with effective solutions? And Eaton's been about these effective solutions for over 100 years. So we just feel really strongly that this is really about growth in economic development. And there is a global competition in this segment. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later. I am a chamber alum, so I want to thank all the chamber representatives on the webinar today. You know, the work that you do to try to promote economic development in your regions is so critical, and it's that local voice that brings a bit of reality to all of these discussions. I remember my days as a government affairs professional for a regional chamber, and really just learned all about how companies work and how policies impact. And I've brought those experiences to my job here at Eaton, which I've had for 16 years, and really am lucky to be working with some really world-class engineering partners that I collaborate with on a daily basis to try to bring these new technologies to the forefront. We are in anything that moves, generally. These are a little snapshot of the segments that our company serves in the market. But we are managing power efficiently, safely, and securely in aircraft, in buildings, in data centers, in wastewater treatment facilities, in heavy-duty trucks, medium-duty trucks, passenger vehicles, you name it, off-road vehicles and such. So we are about the electrification of everything. Electrification brings efficiency. It brings emissions reduction, which is a physics equation. You reduce the power out, utilization, and you eliminate or reduce the emissions. And that's just really a matter of physics. And for us, it provides a more, I think, valuable value proposition to our end markets. So we're pursuing those end markets with these new technologies. This is about our future growth, and it has great benefits. So we have really taken an aggressive stance on our own sustainability. We're going to reduce our own emissions output by half by 2030. And we're making sure that we're across the board contributing to the global race to reduce emissions. But the ancillary benefits of automation and the opportunities to take up some of the slack in supply chains and in workforce through automation will only bring better jobs to the end markets. Now, here's a little snapshot just so everybody understands. We have 30,000 associates in the United States. Of those, 3,600 plus, given on a daily basis, are in North Carolina, in 18 locations throughout the state. We're spending over $250 million in wages in that state and almost $70 million with supply chains. So our economic impact is great. There is no other state that has more people working for Eaton than North Carolina. So what that tells you is that you're doing something right, obviously, that you have the workforce, you have the amenities, you have the desirable locations, and you have the research institutions that help attract the engineering talent that we need and my colleagues need so that we can be successful. Our foray into the electrification of everything is going to benefit North Carolina because look where we are, right? So the future of Eaton is definitely in North Carolina. And I can't say enough about the collaborations I've had over the years with the state of North Carolina, with Senator Tillis's office as we try to address these issues around tariffs and trade and unintended consequences of those things. And then how are we going to go to the next step of electrifying our country and then competing in this global race for electrification technologies? And he and his staff are now leading on the Republican side for electrification. So we couldn't be happier to have this strong constituency relationship there. Eaton is an electrical sector, industrial sectors, 100 years in each, managing power from every source, from the grid into buildings, into data centers, into schools and hospitals. And then our experience in heavy duty trucks, starting as an axle manufacturer and then becoming the prominent transmission manufacturer, and now electrifying those transmissions and now electrifying those platforms as we go forward. In aircraft with fuel conveyance and power, energy and actuation and so forth, the aerospace industry is going to electrify, and we're going to use our experiences in electrification for that space. So it's a marriage of these two businesses that really puts Eaton in a very good standing to succeed in this area. We feel like we know these markets, we know the customers, we know the fleets, and they know us, and they know if they're going to be utilizing our products, those vehicles, those aircraft, all of that stuff is going to work seamlessly. They're going to get their products to the good. There's going to be no issues with that. So that's as important as the science around electrifying things. It has to work. It has to be effective. We feel we have a special place in that. We're now looking at this through everything as a grid. Not only are we going to be electrifying vehicles, but they're going to be connected to infrastructure. They're going to be connected to houses and buildings. And this is a huge opportunity for energy storage, storing energy during off-peak, using it on peak, getting the opportunity to have some of that energy go back onto the grid. So those who are consuming are also producing and selling energy at the same time. So this integrated concept is something that we are going to pursue with vigor, something that is now part of everything that we're doing. And our unique positions in both these segments give us that opportunity to do it. And of course, North Carolina is going to benefit from that. Specifically, we talk about systems and components and what we do. Power conversion, inversion, onboard charging, the safety of electrical power, which is key to what Eaton does for buildings, protecting people in buildings and houses every single day. But migrating all of that to a vehicle. Not a lot of thought put into that in the discussions around the excitement of electrification. But rest assured, it needs to be safe to operate. It needs to be safe to maintain and to work on. And it also needs to be safe for anybody that arrives on a scene and needs to deal with an accident, right? So all of those, firefighters and police and other folks need to understand that we're going to have an off switch that just allows them to do their work and do it in a safe environment. And then, of course, the EV migration into the heavy duty space. There are 11,000 duty cycles in heavy duty vehicles. So what that means is not one solution will fit every single segment. So we're going to have a variety of technologies that we bring to the market: mild hybrids, full hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and full electric technologies that service different segments of this market, all reducing emissions, providing more efficiency at a cost-effective price point for the end market. So this is what we bring to the table. And the charging part of this is an exciting opportunity for us. We have a very aggressive opportunities in Europe, and that we're now migrating to the United States. We actually were in charging 10 years ago and did a lot of that in Asheville. We were one of the world's leaders in hybrid heavy duty trucks, and perhaps we're just a little bit early for the market, but all of that learning, all of that work in engineering and institutional and organizational know-how is now with us as we go into this very robust and prime opportunity for electrification everywhere. I could have shown you a picture from 110 years ago of an electric charging station that was the size of a wall. One of our subsidiaries had it when the discussions around whether vehicles were going to be powered by gas or electricity. And obviously, we know who won that one over 100 years ago. But I think now we're on the verge of the next generation of 21st century technologies and infrastructure. And those infrastructures in the 21st century are not just roads and bridges or airports. It's also vehicle electrification equipment. It's also the grid and modernizing that grid so that we can take advantage of distributed energy resources, have the grid capable of taking on the increased demand of those, increase in electrical power demand, and then also for us to take a look at the integration of all of these different components. So really looking forward to the discussion as we move forward here.
Chris, thank you so much. Panelists, really great conversation. I see nothing but opportunity ahead for us, but we have a few questions that have come in, and I'd like to propose them to you and see what your thoughts are. And please feel free to ask questions to one another as well. So obviously, we talked about the advancements, the technology, what's at stake, the opportunities. Let's talk about the workforce to help make that happen. What kind of recommendations can you give? Because you have economic development directors and chambers of commerce viewing today. How can we help in terms of workforce development? What kind of training do you think is needed to create a workforce to support what you're doing? Any of you?
I'll go first on that. There isn't a chamber of commerce in this country that isn't focused on workforce development. It is the key issue for manufacturers across the United States. There is no jurisdiction that doesn't have issues trying to get enough employees to do the work that we need to get done. And now the pandemic has sort of exacerbated that issue.
Right.
The solutions for those are sometimes they're local in nature. So a local chamber is the best place to be convening with state and local governments to try to bring the best practices to, exciting opportunities in manufacturing. And we got to get out of this notion of smokestacks, because if you come into an Eaton facility in Arden or in Raleigh, it is clean, it is high tech, and it's only going to be more so in the future as we get into automation. So these are the things we need to be communicating. I know that's part of the discussion. The specifics around electrification, I think, promote adoption of electrical engineering, electricians themselves for deployment, software engineers, controls engineers, all of these things, exciting opportunities that we're all in a competition for these talented people. So if you get into these fields, you are going to be in demand. So for us to talk about these exciting opportunities and the fact for people to have very good careers in which there will be no shortage of job opportunities for, like, sometimes you think about the nursing profession. We have nowhere near the nurses that we need, and a nurse can find a job anywhere. I think the future is going to be electric. So if you get into that electrical field, either through electrical engineering or software or electricians, things like that, you are not going to be without opportunities for employment, robust and meaningful employment.
And I would add on to that. I mean, everything Chris said, he usually is much more articulate than I am. So I would echo everything he said there. But there also needs to be, and I hate this term of shifting the narrative, but I think that really applies here. Trane, our CEO, is the chairman of the National Association of Manufacturers, and they have a large campaign going on called Creators Wanted. And it's to do exactly that. It's to go into communities and really start talking about what the modern day manufacturing job means and what does it look like, because there are some legacy thoughts about what that is. And as Chris said, it's not smokestacks anymore. These are really high tech, for all intents and purposes, computer related, very technically advanced jobs that need to get filled. And we have a massive shortage of that. So trying to talk about that, and then also make sure people know that they're also really high paying. And so we're in incredibly high demand, and we need that. And so it's really important to, I think at the local level, really start to show people how exciting this field is and how innovative the jobs are. These aren't the jobs from the 1950s and 60s. This is really keeping it. And they're jobs that are truly impacting and making a positive contribution towards the goals that many young people are very, very interested in. So I think for us at Trane, we're trying to work with organizations like all the chambers, and then also with NAM and the local manufacturing associations to try to go out and do a road show and to talk to people about it. And interesting enough, one of the conversations we did one with the Trump administration a couple of years ago at one of our facilities. And I just started talking with some young people who are part of this FAME program. And I said, hey, what is it about a manufacturing job that would, when you immediately think of it, what's your first impression? And a lot of them said they felt that they were unsafe. And that was interesting feedback for us to say, wow, okay. And we took that back and we said, to Chris's point, we really need to show that we're not just clean, but these are also safe jobs, that safety, all of that isn't part of a good, positive development in the workforce experience. So.
I was just going to add a couple of quick comments to build on what Brian and Chris said. So I think in terms of the core technologies, there's a need for people who understand power electronics, the actual conversion of the power for the vehicles. But as important as the power electronics are, both in the vehicle as well as in the charging infrastructure, the controls, the control software, vehicle itself, but also the controls for charging and the integration in the grid and the optimization of energy. So software and controls is a key part. Underlying battery technology, we're also seeing the development of fuel cell electric vehicles. So that's another technology. But I think we really need to address three areas. One, the relationship with the universities, who are a pipeline for new talent coming into the workforce. We sit on the campus of NC State, which helps us plug into NC State, but also the other universities that are in the region and the state. But second, also looking at retraining the workforce and doing work with Wake Tech and the community colleges for workforce retraining also is an area that we need to focus on. And in starting early, we actually have a customer experience center that we've had on the campus for a number of years, where we host high school students, we host industry, basically providing that upfront education early as to the importance of electrification, the technology, trying to make sure that we're really preparing that workforce pipeline.
That's great. So we have a question in here. So this may or may not be putting you on the spot, but here it goes. Senator Tillis did refer to some of the competition in terms of other countries with supply chains, specifically China. So taking that concern and looking at national policy, state policy, what would be most helpful in terms of contributing to the growth of this sector?
I'll go first again. That's all right. There's a number of policies that are needed, and they're not just specific to direct market workforce in R&D, but the the global competition for electrification is real. We're a global company. Everybody on this panel is a global company. So our businesses are interacting with the governments and with markets in China and Europe and the US. And the future of this is a battle for technology, one that will power the future. So it's incumbent on the United States to really focus on how do we ensure that we maintain this leadership in these vital technologies. We lead in electrification and electrification of vehicles and so forth from a technology standpoint, but we do need to catch up on utilization and adoption. That is really going to help promote the scale needed to get these things into the market. And it is vital that the United States sort of seize this opportunity, because it's not only an economic development opportunity, but it's also a competition for the future of our military as well. They want these technologies. We work with them on a lot of electrification of combat and tactical vehicles and so forth. It's a mobile microgrid opportunity that we've helped them develop and so forth that brings power into remote areas using a vehicle. So again, this is more than just a discussion about whether people like EVs or whatever, but once they get in, they seem to love them. The fact is, this is about the future competitiveness of the country. So investments in deployment, demonstration of technologies, making sure that the R&D can be conducted here. So there's an R&D change coming next year for tax credits that are used by companies to reduce the cost of R&D that happens in the United States. That hopefully will be addressed in the upcoming discussions around infrastructure, so that we can make sure that we can utilize those credits to make sure that we can do that engineering and those R&D things here, but also money to help us deploy the technologies into the market.
And I would just add to that very quickly, just also communicating the practical impact of some of these regulations that do come down. I remember I did a town hall at one of our facilities with Congressman Richard Hudson, and it was right when the 301 tariffs had hit. And he turned to me and he said, "Okay, well, that's not really impacting you all that much." And I said, "Actually, no, it's $90 to $110 million a year." And he couldn't believe that. And that type of and for me, from that point, it was very telling that I need to start doing a better job of communicating the practical impact of these regulations on us and what that does mean for the overall supply chain. So right now we're pushing really hard. We've worked with Congressman Ron Kind, who's another champion of us, really pushing on Capitol Hill to get members. We had over 170 members sign on to a letter to say, "Hey, President Biden, you need to get back the exclusion process, at least to give us an outlet so that we can get some relief on some of our component products that are coming in that we need," because it does make a huge impact.
I was just going to make a quick comment. Really, there were two questions there. One being on the supply chain, and we're a global company, so we operate in a global economy and deal with supply chain on a regular basis. And we're working to make sure here in the U.S. we certainly are competitive from a global perspective. But I think both Chris and Brian touched on what I think is one of the key points. Policy matters. It really does matter in terms of moving forward with new technology, and more specifically, the deployment of technology. We have great companies in North Carolina that produce products, but if we can't deploy those products here locally in the state and have an environment that really encourages electrification of transportation or encourages deployment of renewable generation, or it's very difficult to grow the economy and the workforce when you have to point to another state to look at a deployment example or a demonstration project. So I think what the chambers can do locally is how do we advocate, how do we facilitate that the deployment of these technologies, particularly electrification of transportation, whether it's light duty vehicles or whether it's heavy and medium duty or transit buses, whatever the case may be, and advocate for that deployment so that we can have leading edge technology developed and deployed here. We're developing the technologies, we're manufacturing the technologies. I think if there's any gap where policy can help in the state of North Carolina, it's really with that deployment.
Thank you. Thank you, panelists. And I'm hearing some very clear messaging on this. Global competition is real. It's a battle of technology, vital for us to seize these opportunities. The future of military applications, R&D tax credits, policy matters. So we hear you loud and clear. Thank you so much. And now I am going to ask Lori to come back to join us. And I really want to just wrap up and just emphasize it's truly about attracting the best and brightest to our state, setting a path for job creation, support of these manufacturing opportunities, and support private sector and policy support of the technology to get us there. It's clear it's going to require robust policy at the national level and perhaps state level as well, along with private sector leadership and development that we heard from today. I would like to make sure to thank Senator Tillis, our electric set of panelists, Chambers of Commerce economic development leaders for joining us today. Lori, any last thoughts from you as well?
I'll ditto everything you said, Susan. This was amazing, and I can't wait to go back and watch it so I can sort of, relax a little bit and enjoy it more. But and just all the positiveness was just so awesome to hear, and it's like the cloud is lifting from COVID, and it's just so great to hear from everybody. And Susan, thank you so much for all your work. As usual, I enjoy so much working with CICE. So thanks, everybody, panelists, Senator Tillis, and Senator Tillis's office too. Thank you.
And you'll see, you should see on your screen, there's my contact information as well as Lori's. Please feel free to follow up with us with any questions, or if you just want to chat further about opportunities to support clean energy. We're always up for those conversations. Lori, I agree. It's an honor to partner with Conservatives for Clean Energy.